Everybody listen to We're Not Wizards, because we are the best, and we're not wizards, no matter what anybody says. Goodbye.
Hello and welcome to another episode of We're Not Wizards. My name's Richard. I'll be your host for the Puppy Armageddon. He's furry, he's friendly. It's like if Fast and Furious did their next version, it would be the Fast and Furriest. He's not here. He has been causing disruption. Who knew that you would have to wipe a puppy's bum at the age of 13 weeks when he couldn't? But anyway, I'm not here to explain to you or even mansplain to you about how to be looking after animals. I'm happy, but I'm not in any kind of funk or maybe in any kind of Funko. I wish I was a little bit more wise and potentially a little bit more wicked, or maybe a bit both wicked and wise. Because joining me today to talk about Wicked and Wise, their game, which is currently sitting on Kickstarter, I've got Fertessa Allyse.
Hello.
Hello.
Hello. Thank you for that beautiful intro.
It's kind of not beautiful. It was kind of, it was a little bit haphazard, and then I felt I kind of fell in the middle, and then it kind of totaled off to the end. But we did what we can do. How are you, first of all? Are you well?
I am doing quite well, other than allergies, but yes, I'm doing quite well.
What is it? Is it hay fever season, or is it just various?
I don't actually know, because I just recently moved to Seattle, so what would consider as allergy season is now, it's different, because I feel like it's a lot longer here, and I just don't know. I wake up and I get hit by it, and then I take my allergy stuff, and then I'm good. So I don't know.
Does it rain all the time in Seattle? Because one of the things they say about Seattle is that it's like you just wait. It's like the Scottish version. If they move Scotland into America, then they would probably put it in the Seattle area because it rains an awful lot. Is it quite rainy?
I would actually say it is more overcast, because like coming from Georgia, what I consider rain is like it's downpouring and thunderstorming. But over here, raining could just be like a gentle mist, and then it could be like 20 minutes and this be done. So it's
you just
like
walk outside, you get soaked. Basically,
yeah.
you can like it's nice and warm to wear a jacket. Yeah. I'm not going to wear a jacket, and you still come in feeling like you've gone swimming.
In Seattle, I often will walk outside while it's misting and I'm not soaked, and I go back inside. But Atlanta, you can't play that. So, yeah.
So how long you been in Seattle then, and what made you decide to kind of move?
It's going on 9 or 10 months now, and I just wanted like a change of pace. I wanted to see if going to a new state would give me better job opportunities, which it did. And I just wanted to also move to a city that was a lot more walkable. In Georgia, it's like you need a car. You can't just walk anywhere.
I would have thought it would have been maybe the other way around. I would have thought that Seattle would have been the place where, or is that, I always get that confused, because obviously in the movies everybody talks about going to California, or that's wrong, because I can only base that off one movie, which is LA Story, which is they have that particular scene where they say, they say, well, we're going down to their house. Where's their house? It's only a block down there. It's like, can't we just walk? And it's like, no, you're in California. Nobody kind of walks.
I can't speak to California, but I can definitely say from where I live, there are 3 grocery stores in walking distance, 5
Wow.
bakeries, and I don't know how many restaurants. But in Georgia, there was maybe 2 eateries in walking distance in a gas station. And walking distance was just like you could walk for a mile and a half in Georgia and just reach the one destination you intended to walk. But you could walk a mile and a half in Seattle and pass like 100 different places. So it's quite different.
Do they have in Seattle? Do they have that terrible radio station with Kelsey Grammer in it, or
Well,
does he
Kelsey
still do
Grammer is a treasure, but I have not heard Kelsey Grammer on the radio. The few times I use it, I'm usually kind of on my Spotify. But
Did they not have a day? I've heard they used to have a day for
Really?
him in Seattle. In actually
my
Seattle, he
gosh.
used to. I mean, this was obviously back in the day where he was famous. They used to actually have a day. Everybody would gather together, and he would a couple of times he would sing the theme tune. Now, I'd
That's
imagine
hilarious.
the people of Seattle would be wondering what they ever did to deserve Kelsey Grammer singing at them and them celebrating it. But there you
Now
kind of
I
go.
have to find that. I need to look that up and see.
No, you don't need to. It wouldn't enrich your life to have him
You know,
singing at
Wants
all.
Kelsey Grammer scatting in your ear for a little bit.
The only time I ever see it is like occasionally, like they have like because our television is just full of reality shows, which is generally rubbish. Occasionally, we have reruns on particular channels, but they seem to have early in the morning. If you get up early enough, you actually have. There's a particular channel that just does reruns of. I think it's Everybody Loves Raymond, and then followed by Frasier.
Yes.
Because even though we're in the UK, we are all aware of Frasier. Everybody kind of watched Frasier. I don't think as many people watched Everybody Loves Raymond, but that's just. But, so I'm totally aware of kind of like everything that was kind of going on in the story and everything like that.
Yeah.
So were you a Georgian born and bred then? Did you stay in Georgia kind of all of your life then? Well, up until obviously when you.
Yeah, I was born and bred in Georgia. If someone wanted specifics, more Atlanta-ish than any other part of Georgia. And then I did go to school in Florida for 5 years.
Wow.
So that was probably the only other time I lived outside of Georgia.
And I take it as soon as you got the chance to move out of Florida, you were
I went right back home to Georgia. Yeah. I'm good. I'm good on my Florida quota for a minute.
For the rest, you're good for the rest of your life. In terms of your relationship with like kind of tabletop, where did that kind of step in? Did you play games from a young age, or is this something like a lot of people did that somebody went? Because I see you've got Catan on your shelf.
Yes.
So I'm wondering if that's you just trying to brag and say, look, I've got Catan on my shelf, or because you can measure it. Because if you look on the other side, you've got code names.
Yes.
So they're actually, it's really interesting because I would look on Catan on one side as being like a game that got people into the hobby like 15 odd years ago. I'd see Codenames as a game that was getting people into the hobby maybe 4 or 5 years ago. So it's kind of interesting that you've got the kind of like the double side.
Yeah.
But from your side, growing up in Georgia, what was the kind of the tabletop experience? Was that something you got into quite early, or was it something you got into kind of later on?
So I got into games at an early age, but I got into the hobby about 4 years ago.
Wow.
My parents, or my mom and my granddad in particular, they would play games with me as a kid. And that was my way to kind of have a fun social interaction with them. So I always had a love and appreciation for games, but they were usually card games like solitaire or spades, things like that, or board games like Monopoly, Risk, those kind of things.
Yeah.
Even Taboo. But I wasn't aware of the hobby beyond like seeing kind of these dusty corners in the comic book shop where people would be kind of hunched over, and I just see these boxes of things, and I'd just be like, oh, that's that seems like that's deep in a secret club I can't be a part of. So I wasn't really introduced to the hobby until about 4 or 5 years ago, 2017.
Wow.
I had some friends who also enjoyed board games, and we were like the only adults we knew that enjoyed board games. So we decided to meet up like once a month to play, and they started buying different games like Betrayal House on the Hill and Sushi Go, which are still, kind of mainstream games.
Yeah.
But as we were exploring that, one of my friends was just like, I want to make my own board game. And when she did that, that got the wheels turning in my head about like, what would a board game look like if I made one? And that started me on the path to seeing like the hobby and seeing how deep it was, because I only really had those games, and another friend taught me Catan also, but I could never follow through with it. Like I still wasn't aware of the hobby. These just kind of managed to, I guess, get past the barrier and got introduced to my life. But when I started exploring how to design my own game and what that meant, what mechanics were, and who had done this before me, that is what led me into all these other board games that existed. And I was suddenly playing so many different games that I just didn't know existed.
So in terms of like when you were at kind of like school and stuff like that, were you always quite creative? I mean, did you go to like college, university, places like that, and were you majoring in the kind of the creative side of things yourself?
Yeah. So growing up, I grew up as an only child. So I had to use my imagination quite a lot to entertain myself, which is another thing that board games let me do. But as far as my other ventures, I was always drawing. I was always writing fictional stories. And I just tried to express myself in any way possible. So it just manifested in different ways. In college, I went to the University of Florida for digital media, which sounds very technical, but basically it was teaching you how to express yourself artistically using digital mediums. So I learned about digital painting and programming for art and just all sorts of random things.
I can't imagine programming for art. I mean, I don't know. Let's do a paintbrush, folks. Yeah. Okay.
It was very emo and very like trying to do it to also get a grade. Is a very interesting mixture. But I was in everything, even video editing. I make these videos and try and express myself and all sorts of things. But after that, I graduated after those 4 years, and then I went to a trade school called the Dave School, which is short for Digital Animation and Visual Effects.
Wow.
So I learned like 3D modeling and how to use the green screen and things like that, rotoscoping. And I thought I was going to get a career in like the visual effects field for film and TV. So that was super interesting to me for some years. And whenever I got out of that, I was also trying to do my own video editing, and I got into photography. And it just constantly kind of evolved, but I never quite found my foothold as I, try to get employment with those things.
Did you go into the physical medium then? Did you? I mean, if are you a doodler?
Yes.
If you were on a call with somebody and it was like kind of like wasn't exciting, not obviously like this, which is obviously super exciting, because I can notice you're not doodling at all. But if you were kind of in a meeting, would you end up kind of going, "I'm just drawing. Here we go, just a cat." What was that? Yeah, that's really interesting. Would you kind of like be a doodler and draw and stuff like that? And do you enjoy using the physical medium as well?
Yeah, from a child to now, I still do it. And it's not even whether something is super interesting or not. I mean, if something is super engaging, then yes, but my brain will kind of stall out, kind of like a screensaver on a computer. If it's not engaged enough at a certain point, it would just go blank.
I'm terrible at that. Absolutely. And I don't know if it's because people are always at me and they're going like, it's maybe an ADHD thing, but
Yeah.
it's like if you're not grabbing my attention, I'm two things. Yeah, I will wander. I'm not very good at feigning kind of interest in
Yeah.
something. If something doesn't interest me, I'm just like that. Okay.
It is, I think a form of ADD, and the doodling, like I can doodle and listen at the same time because the doodling is engaging my brain. And
Yes.
so I'll do that. And I'll also start writing characters, like Hangul is the Korean characters. So that also engages my brain too.
Wow.
And then, the meeting will be done like, Fertessa, were you paying attention? Yep. I know exactly what you said. Thank you for allowing me to do.
It's like that. It's like that scene in the film Baby Driver, where Kevin Spacey's going through the plot, and your man turns around and says, "I don't think he got it." And it's Jamie Foxx.
Yeah.
And then the guy just turns around and recites the whole thing, and it's just like, "All right, you were kind of paying attention."
Exactly.
What is the creative industry? Is it a really kind of competitive market? Is that why you found it kind of difficult to get a foothold in the kind of the career?
I think it is extremely competitive, but also I think that I didn't find something that I absolutely clicked with. Like, there are a lot of things creatively that I can do and that I enjoy doing for myself. But when you're doing it for a company, I think the love for that or the passion for that is what drives you to go that extra step, which makes you competitive. So I was never driven to go that extra step to be competitive in those fields. But when I reached board games, I suddenly found the passion that, that had eluded me with the previous industries. And it got me to go those extra steps and push my boundaries and, explore different venues, always be in a state of learning. Like all those things they tell you should be doing for a job. Like I tried to go through the motions when it came to the previous industries, but I was never passionate about it. And I didn't understand that until I found something I was passionate about. Yes, they were very competitive, but also as much time and dedication as I put towards trying to get into those industries, it never reached the passion that I currently hold for board games.
Yeah, it's like trying to answer that question. You get the interview question in the sense, so why should you come and work for us? And you're kind of like, I really don't know. Because I went to the guys down the street and you're paying an extra $3,000 a year.
Yeah.
That's why I applied, kind of thing.
Yeah. It's like, I think okay.
You mentioned being into modern board games in 4 or 5 years. And yet looking over the last kind of 4 or 5 years, you're managing to get signed up board games signed left, right, and center.
Yeah.
So is there a part of you that's kind of sitting there going, well, this is easy. I don't know. I don't know why you're all complaining that, you are all talking about trying to get your board game kind of done and help to getting stuff signed and stuff like that. And you're, I'm literally just getting games kind of left, right, and center here. Or was it? I mean, your first game, the first one you got signed, Book of Villainy.
Yeah.
I mean, we're going to talk about Wicked and Wise. I promise you. We're actually going to get around the subject that you're on about. But is it just that things clicked? Because, okay, my thing on the digital thing is you can spend literally weeks putting together something in the digital realm and it still looks rubbish and you can't do anything with it. However, I can get like 27 pieces of white paper. I can draw numbers on it and we can be playing a full game that I've designed literally within 5 minutes. So what kind of say like the design process for like Book of Villainy, did it just click for you? Were you just like, Tony Stark in it, moving all the stuff around and just like, oh look, I've invented time travel?
No.
Kind of thing.
No, I mean, it felt very difficult for me, especially with my first game. So my very first game was Book of Villainy.
Yeah.
And whenever I was designing that, I actually went through such a extreme kind of designing process with that game.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I think it was actually my art background that allowed me to kind of scrap it every time and kind of start from the ground up.
Mm-hmm.
So, whenever I would learn, I was in that learning process again, learning about the hobby, learning about all these different things. And
Yeah.
when I started working on Book of Villainy, I basically only had knowledge of kind of rolling moves and
Wow.
risk. So I didn't even know how to make my pieces move other than a rolling move. And so the very first iteration of Book of Villainy looked very similar to Monopoly board, even though it played differently, but that
Yeah.
was because that was all I knew. And so I would go, I just oversaturated myself because I was at a desk job. So I'd spend say 6 to 8 hours a day listening to gaming podcasts.
Mm-hmm.
And then as soon as I got home, or even during my lunch break, I would make prototypes at my desk at work. Like there's a CVS downstairs, which is like a little
Mm-hmm.
drugstore. I would go down there, get supplies, go up there, make a prototype. I would immediately try and get my little friend group together to try and play test it or play test it myself. And
Mm-hmm.
then, if something wasn't working, scrapped it, start, build on something else. I joined BGG. I
Right.
immediately started a work in progress journal and tried to like get things out there, learn from the different threads, engage with the community. And
Mm-hmm.
like these things all kind of culminated in how much my game changed because every time I would get feedback, that would bring like a new, oh, I wonder what happened if I, totally changed the approach to how I did this thing.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so while it happened in a short time to other people, for me, it was a huge process because I wasn't sleeping. Like I'd get maybe 3, 4 hours of sleep in the night um, because I had a full time job, and then I would
Yeah.
go and work on this game for hours. And then I was just constantly consuming so much. So I was packing a lot into a small amount of time.
Mm-hmm.
And it just so happened because I wasn't even confident enough to pitch Book of Villainy until probably a year and a half into its development. I didn't know anybody in the industry. I only gone to conventions that were in Georgia, and I got introduced. I'm an introvert, so
Yeah. Okay.
I once I was at a convention, I couldn't even properly get people to come test. I would just sit there and look very sad and hope that somebody would know
Yeah.
that I
Yeah.
was trying to test my game. But it was because the community was so welcoming that people would find me and they would come and they would recommend it to other people. And that was how I started getting people to test. But it was the entire first year, second year even, of Book of Villainies development was me being out of my comfort zone. So and I was stressed. I was very stressed about it, but at the same time I was so happy and motivated to keep getting out of there. So it happened in a short time with these games getting signed back to back. But I would say that all of the work and or all of the groundwork that I put into Book of Villainy for those first 2 years paved the way for my second and third game and how
Mm-hmm.
they had gotten, I guess, snapped up so quickly in comparison to Book of Villainy. Because Book of Villainies was a much longer creation period. And
Yeah.
by that point, I had met people and I had also learned how to sell myself and sell my game just to even, get people to look at it and to, give their feedback. So that by the time I started on, say, Wicked and Wise,
Mm-hmm.
immediately it had a lot more advantage with like feedback and attention than Book of Villainy did. Same thing with Mansplaining.
Yeah, I kind of didn't want to get into mansplaining. No, no, because my guessing is that was that again? Was a game when you're designing a game like that? Was that must have been born out of a bit of personal experience, and say, okay, what can I do with this? Can I turn this into an actual game
That one,
instead?
Mansplaining was a very interesting challenge because it was actually, I was approached by my co-designer, and he had the idea for the Mansplaining game, and he wanted to try and do a co-design with me. It's my first co-design. And he was just like, would you be interested in making a party game about this? And that's when I did approach it with how do I make Mansplaining into something that I would want to play, or something that would be fun. And together we kind of put our heads together, and we managed to design that game entirely digitally over a series of emails. And then we play tested it in Tabletop Simulator. But that was one of those ones you hear some designers say, oh, I wrote this down on a napkin and boom, we had the game. That was one of those games that kind of fell together quite quickly. And it went through the play testing phase a lot quicker than any of my other games, maybe because of the nature of party games.
So you used to almost kind of like remote testing before everybody was remote testing. Yeah, basically, because before COVID, you were just like, well, I'm already doing this, and now COVID's hit. You're just like, well, just come and speak to me because I'll be able to kind of help. I'll be able to mansplain how to you to create a game.
We made it during COVID, so it was during the Tabletop Simulator. Like me and the co-designer have never played it in person with each other.
That's so weird.
And we were both in Atlanta, but at that point, COVID had already gotten into its swing, because I want to say it was March of last year. And we designed it through email in about 2 weeks, and we had gotten it signed within 4 months of designing it. So it was all online. We even pitched it online. So
is it the type of game that you could know you can use it to annoy people? Because there must be a certain section of the community that if you say, would you like to play this? On the other side, have you had people mansplain to you how you should be designing your own game called Mansplaining?
I've had people mansplain to me about game design in general. Yes.
Yeah.
But with Mansplaining, that one's been really, really fun. And it actually lends itself quite well to playing digitally, like on Zoom or something. As long as you have one person that's like feeding the cards to the other players through like a private chat or something. But yeah, I've had the experience of being mansplained to, and that informed a lot of the design decisions about how the game should feel, because we don't want to recreate the feeling of the insult of being mansplained to. We want it to recreate the ridiculousness of what mansplaining is, in that the person feels like they are helping and they are explaining this thing that obviously how to do, and they're not even using the right terms or anything to try and explain how to do this thing, but you're still supposed to like follow along. So yeah, that definitely helped inform how we designed that.
You're involved in Funko. So what is it you're currently doing with them at the moment?
So at Funko Games, I am a game producer. So that's kind of like a project manager, where we get a game and we get teammates assigned to the game. And then we try and make sure that the game hits its deadline for whatever, all the files need to go to the factory, so that it will get to the shelves on time. We also want to make sure that the game stays in its budget, as well as is a phenomenal game, or is the best game that it can be, that it follows its theme, and we've put thought into everything possible, including just even the liner of the box, or what kind of art complements the theme. You have to think about all these smaller details. But then also, as a producer, you still get the opportunity to participate in other roles. So
Yeah.
I get to do game design, even though I am a game producer, and so I can help with creating the actual game itself, as well as keeping it on its timeline.
With the Funko name kind of being pretty well known,
Mhm.
I mean, it obviously extends far out the reach of kind of like the board gaming scene.
Mhm.
When you're explaining to people your job, I
Mhm.
mean, if you say, well, I'm working with Funko, I take
Mhm.
it you get more people to go, oh, right, and you get a million questions. I take it as
Mhm.
any of the questions, can you get me this Funko Pop, this Funko Pop, and this Funko Pop? Yeah.
No, the question that I get the most is they're like Funko with Funko Pops, and then they're
Mm,
like, do you make games with the Funko Pops, or you guys only have like a game or two,
mm,
because they see our Funkoverse,
yeah.
um, and that's like a mini war game with the Funko Pops,
Yeah.
but we make all sorts of games, and also the interesting thing is previously, before we were acquired by Funko, were under the name Prospero Hall. So
Oh,
if you
yeah,
see
yeah.
the name
Okay. Yeah.
with Prospero Hall in the back, that's
Yeah.
also Funko Games.
All right. Cool. Cool. Cool.
Hmm.
Moving on to Wicked and Wise.
Hmm.
Um, Carla's been on the show a couple of times,
Yeah.
and in fact, I think one of the first or second podcasts that she did was on this show. How long was it? How long was it between you first meeting Carla and you deciding you had to sign or make a game with them? How short was it? A Planck's constant type of period of time?
So I would say that I didn't even deign to think that I was worthy to work with Carla. So when I first met her, I was playtesting for Book of Villainy, and she was actually the
Mm,
very first publisher that I played a game with. And
wow.
I was super nervous. And Carla's the best person you could ever play a game with. She's so
Yeah.
chill, but I
Yeah.
was so nervous. Again, introvert and out of my comfort zone. Um,
She's
and like,
probably also the best person to be nervous in front of as well. Because I think, if it's like if you're going to be feeling intimidated by anybody, I
hmm.
think they would probably be the best person to be feeling
Hmm.
intimidated with, because you know that
Exactly.
they would instantly, if they picked it up. I think Carla would personally feel kind of offended if she thought
Hmm.
that she'd intimidated anybody at all. To be honest.
Hmm. And I from that moment on,
Mm,
I started to run into Carla at other conventions because we were both in the South. She's Alabama and I'm Georgia.
yeah.
And we just kind of ended up hanging out, because we were both wanted kind of our space when there were too many people in the halls and things like that. So
Mm,
I really just wanted to be Carla's friend because she seemed like a really cool person.
yeah.
And
Yeah.
um, like, because we became friends, that was actually when she ended up being the very first, her and her husband were the very first people to play Wicked and Wise. Like, and it's just after my self play test, she played the very first version, and I still didn't have any, thoughts of pitching to her. I just thought that I was not on her level yet. So I just really was like, "Hey, would you like to play my trash game real quick? I know it's trash. I don't even have the rules written out yet, but
Wow.
could we play test it?" And
Please don't hate me. Kind of thing.
um but no, they played it. They were really kind, because like I didn't even realize that I hadn't written down the rules and I hadn't explained it out loud to anyone yet.
Wow.
So when I sat there and I explained how to play, and I was like, I'm so sorry, but bear with me. But they were very chill, because it was just like a game design jam weekend where we were all playtesting each other's game.
Yeah.
And at the end of the game, though, they were just like, I mean, it's very rough, but there's something very interesting here. And
Wow.
that was the first time I realized I had something with Wicked and Wise. And it wasn't until maybe a month or two later, that I was playing it at Metatopia. And that's when she spoke to me about potentially working together, and I was so happy about that. So
That's
we
cool.
ended up signing it soon after.
That's cool. That's
Mhm.
cool. Let's talk about gameplay. How do you
Mhm.
play it? I'm sitting in front. I'm sitting in front of you. The
Mhm.
game's in front of me. What's the base mechanics? How do you play?
Yeah. So I'll start off with this game plays very differently depending on player count, because this is a team-based asymmetric game. So
Hmm.
when it was first developed, it was developed as a 4-player only game, kind of like Spades, if you've ever played that.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so the way that it would be is there are 2 partners. One is the dragon and one is the mouse. The dragon is in charge of trick taking, so they are in charge of playing the higher numbered cards in order to win that trick.
Mm-hmm.
And then the mouse is actually in charge of stacking their partner's hands with good cards.
All right.
Um,
Okay.
yeah. So normally, I guess if you played Spades, the trump cards or the most powerful cards are already shuffled into the deck. But in my
Yeah.
game, the most powerful cards are their own deck, and nobody starts with them. The partner, the mouse partner, is in charge of feeding those to their partner, and they have to use different card abilities in order to do that. So again, normally in trick taking, everybody is playing a card for the number and trying to come out on top with the highest number.
Yeah.
But in this one, only the dragon is concerned with, playing those numbers and getting the trick. And the partner is totally concerned with the abilities that are on the bottom of all the cards, and, swapping cards with their partner or picking up these trump cards so that they can win the tricks. The other thing is, usually in trick taking games, people are just trying to straight up win the most tricks in order to win the game.
Yeah.
But in this game, we have team goals. So it could say your team goal is to win exactly 2 tricks, no more.
Wow.
And if you do, you get a certain amount of coins. If you don't, you lose coins. Or it could be, it doesn't matter how many tricks you win, but you need to make sure that you win a certain amount with these suits. So these goals will set very interesting challenges for your team to meet. And if you do, you get the reward. And if not, you get the consequence. And you can also kind of stop other teams from doing that as well. Stop other teams from meeting their goals. So
Right.
that
Okay.
that is kind of the flow of the game. The ultimate purpose of it is your team is trying to get the most coins at the end of the game, because dragons love gold. Um,
Mm.
and I say that it plays differently on player count because, it's originally a team game, but when you get down to the 2-player count, which we're really proud about this, we have created a dual role that allows you to play as both the dragon and the mouse. And that one is like a very high strategy mode where you and the other player are playing as the dragons, concentrating on the trick taking, and you share a mouse hand. So you share the cards with the abilities, so you can kind of see what they have available. Same, they can see what you have available, and you can kind of arrange the cards in a way that can screw over the next person, because you have to follow suit. And that uses a lot of trick taking terminology, so that may be very confusing, but um, basically the 2-player is more of a head-to-head dueling mode that engages your mind in a different way than the team-based mode. So you want to consider that whenever you decide what version to play. But both are quite fun and thoroughly thought out.
Was it a little bit nerve wracking knowing that you were going to be taking it to kind of Kickstarter?
I guess a little bit, just in the general nerves for any Kickstarter. But I was just super excited to see how it would do, because it was a game that had a very unique, or has a very unique mechanic going on,
Yeah.
and really I just wanted to see how people reacted to that, and see, hopefully, that a lot of people wanted to try it out. especially seeing how it was brought to life because Beth Sobel did the art for it, and it's just like it always just makes my heart go pitter patter to see her art on the screen for my stuff.
It's this. It's I think for a lot of people now, just having the kind of Beth Sobel doing the art on any project is enough to make them kind of almost insta back it, just so they've got that kind of in the collection, and it also, to me, this kind of fits in. I know you mentioned dragons, but I wonder if it's the same dragon that was involved in setting anything to do with the fire in the library, because I believe that Beth was responsible for doing the illustrations on that as well. So it's almost like Weird Giraffe are bringing a kind of their own kind of multiverse kind of thing, kind of going on.
Yes.
Again, I mean, with the COVID situation, in terms of actually getting the game kind of out there and kind of play testing it, and obviously there's not been any cons and stuff like that. Did you have to approach the kind of the awareness and the marketing side of the game from a different kind of point of view to like what's been done kind of like in the past? Or
so first off, Carla is amazing at marketing. She's doing stuff I can't even see. And I just happen to see other people come like, oh, I saw Carla's post for here and there, and she's just everywhere. She is tireless. But as far as the actual like people who have played the games, before COVID hit, Wicked and Wise probably had a good 3 months of physical playtesting going on.
Right, okay.
In which the mechanic, even though it was super, super rough and totally different from how it is now, the mechanic was still unique enough that people remembered it. So it stayed in mind if you played it. But once pandemic hit, a entire community around digital playtesting rose up, and I made sure that Wicked and Wise was regularly tested on a weekly basis. Way more than I think I would have been able to at conventions, because it did require such a high player count. And again, I was not the best at recruiting people to play games. Carla is much better at that. But it got a very thorough playtesting online, and through that online community, because not Wicked and Wise, but Weird Giraffe and Raptor have their own Discord channel, which they kind of foster community for playtesting their specific their games that are in progress, and through word of mouth and people experiencing it there, we managed to get more impressions and more recommendations to play the game. And we would post whenever we got some really cool components and things like that. Both Carla and I are active on social media, so that was how we kept, I guess, marketing wise, how we kept it relevant and in people's minds. And then once it was close to the Kickstarter, that's when Carla went all out in all of her posts and Facebook.
Yeah. And you can see that because you're sitting on, well over being funded now, which that must be a pretty cool feeling to kind of be in. I guess because if you're part of, like, say, you're working at kind of like for Funko, it must almost be a case of, well, we know this is going to sell potentially X number of units kind of anyway. When you're doing something like a Kickstarter, it must be a case of, well, is it going to reach like 100 people? Is it going to reach like 400 or 500 people instead?
Yeah, that is absolutely. I think that's the nerve-wracking part, because you never know if your game will be big enough to get a reprint. So for me, I think of it as this is the only time my game will get printed. And so every single person that backs is one more person that will have the game. And, I could potentially come up on it in the wild. And I hope to see people really being able to enjoy this as a different take on the trick taking genre,
Mhm.
and I'd really like to see it in as many hands as possible. So the more people that back, I'm just like super excited because that feels a little bit more attainable each time.
Cool. So there's at the time that we're talking, there's looking at the current clock, there's still over like 2 weeks to go.
Mm-hmm.
And to get in the door, you're looking, it's about $25, or about
Mm-hmm.
£19, and that will get you the standard game. If you bump it up to $45, you're going to get the game with a play mat as well,
Mm-hmm.
which is kind of pretty cool. Have you got your own? I take it you must have a couple of different variations of the game in various kind of different stages. Have you got like a little box that's got kind
Mm-hmm.
of everything, that's still got kind of the original prototypes and everything like that on it?
So I don't have a box except for maybe the very original prototype because I moved. I was in Georgia when I started working on Wicked and
Right.
Wise, and
Yeah.
then I had to like get rid of 50 to 60% of all my belongings to move across country.
Wow.
And yeah, so there were some things lost, but also the majority of the development happened online. So
Okay.
it was so very different from the
Mhm.
original that I couldn't even justify keeping
Wow.
any more of the prototypes. But
So
I
you'll be
now have
glad,
this
but
very
you'll be glad when you get your final kind of published copy, because I mean
hmm
this is going to get made. I mean this is a thing. This
yes,
is something that's kind of definitely gonna happen now.
yeah.
Are you are you not are you not tempted to kind of go and knock on the door of the bosses at Funko and say, "Hey, look what I made"? Or are they aware of what's going on?
They're definitely aware of it. I've had some
Mm.
really cool coworkers that supported it because these games I made them before I signed on with Funko.
Okay.
So they're still cool to fly, but you typically can't make something while you're employed with another company. So I was just very
Yeah.
lucky that they were supportive of that, and um, I was able to see that through. But yes, they are all aware of it, and they've wished me congrats. So I'm very happy about
Superb.
that.
Superb. So, if people want to keep an eye on you
Hmm.
and track your ongoing progress, and we're expecting at least another 7 or 8 games signed off in the next kind of year and a half, because I mean, we're expecting some kind of huge kind of logarithmic curve or whatever kind of going
Hmm.
forward. Where do you exist on the internet webs if they want to keep an eye on you?
You can find me on Twitter at Fertessa, Fertessa.
Mm-hmm.
And that is where I am most active, where I update things that I'm working on. You can find
Mm.
the Kickstarter link for Wicked and Wise there. And any games that I'm working on, because currently I've worked on quite a few games at Funko, but I can't talk about them until they're officially released. But once they are, you will be hearing about all those games, which should be hitting the shelves in the next
All
year or
over it.
so.
Lots of
Hmm.
noise. You'll be shouting it from the rooftops, no doubt.
Yep.
Cool. Cool.
Exactly. Yes.
Brilliant. Brilliant. Well, what I'll do is I'll make sure, as always, that we put all the links from in the show notes, so that we've got some notes to show. If people are listening along tonight, and if you like what you've listened to tonight, then thank you very much. The dog is now falling asleep at my feet. That's the latest update. I am going to wake him up when I'm finished here, because he's been a little bit of a pain in the ass, but he is a puppy, and he is lovely. But if you want to keep an eye on what we're up to, then just go to the internet webs and search for We're Not Wizards, and you'll find us on all the different lovely worn out faces, bright and early for the daily races. You'll find us on Twitter, and we're on Instagram, and we're We've got our Facebook group, and if you want to read our stuff, you can read our blog on we'renotwizards.co.uk. If you want to listen to more podcasts, then you can listen to them by going to we'renotwizards.com. If you like what you've listened to tonight, then please go to the Apple podcasts and consider giving us a rating or a review. If you are going to be giving us a rating or a review, don't give me 10 stars because it just makes me big-headed and bad enough as it is. But don't give me 1 star because it'll make us cry. Give us something in the middle, like a 5, because it's average, and we're just a little bit average. But the person who's not being average is the rather wonderful, rather fantastic Fertessa Allyse. Thank you very much for coming on.
Thank you for having me. It was a joy.
Putting up with puppy-related shenanigans, which we're going to leave that here and not say anything more. There is only 2 more things to do. The first thing is to remember that we're many things, but we're not wizards. Are we wizards, Fertessa?
No, we are not.
And the second thing is to say goodbye. So it's a goodbye from Fertessa. Say goodbye, Fertessa.
Goodbye, Fertessa.
And fantastic. I love it when people do that. It's so good. And it's goodbye from me. Remember, stay safe, roll 6s, make something awful. And I'm just here to say that you can maybe be a little bit evil, but also be a little bit knowledgeable. Yes, you can be wicked and wise. But until the next time, goodbye.
Bye.
A wizard is never late. Nor is he early. He arrives precisely when he means to.